UFC Shanghai takes place this upcoming Saturday, and we got a very early start time for it, at least over here in the States. We got the early prelims kicking off around 3 a.m. with the main card starting at 6 a.m. in the morning. Depending on how you guys want to do that, you figure it out. Maybe you go to bed nice and early and you wake up in time for them, or for some of you youngsters, you just cruise through the night and go right into the fight card and make it one hell of a night. I don't know how you're going to do it. I know that there's a lot of people around the world that are enjoying this start time, as you guys on a weekend basis have to adjust to the American start time. So I'm sure some of you guys are liking that, and it's not a bad card, man. Johnny Walker's taking on Mingyang Zhang. That should be a fun fight. Brian Ortega takes on Aljamain Sterling. Sergei Pavlovich takes on Waldo Cortes-Acosta. That's a fight that I like there. And other than that, you could mention Loner Kavanagh is taking on Charles Johnson on the prelims. So I mean, it's just, don't think this is a horrendous card. Obviously, it's not the most stacked of events, but it's not near what UFC 319 was. And I have to address the elephant in the room. If you guys didn't catch my Dana White's Contender Series Week 2 breakdown, I did talk about DDP taking that loss. I know a lot of you guys like to see me recap my cards and how I do. And occasionally when I have the luxury of having the results before I record, I will mention something here or there. So you guys know I lost some big money on DDP. I was backing my boy there. I thought there was a good value on him. I stand behind it. I was not expecting Chimaev to, I wouldn't say I wasn't expecting him to have success with the wrestling, but not to that degree. I mean, he absolutely dominated, but most importantly, I was not expecting him to fight that kind of fight for 25 minutes. Okay, even if he had the ability, I was a little surprised he took that high fight IQ route. I thought that we would see a little bit of stand-up action going on, and we saw a glimpse of it in the 5th round, but it didn't last more than a few seconds. So if you guys see, I'm rocking all black, man. We're mourning over here, and I take that L on the chin, and I'm looking to move forward and capitalize on this event here. So shout out to even you guys that were coming through on Instagram at mmafortuneteller, and everyone that was hitting my last video in the comment section. You guys were all coming at me, but specifically in IG, man. A lot of people were coming through on IG, and I get it, right? I came through with a lot of confidence in my pick, and it was just a fun event. My favorite fighter in the game and all that. So, I mean, I was going to bring that kind of energy. It was just one of those events, man. I felt like it was the time to do something fun like that. And obviously, in the back of my mind, I knew what Khamzat Chimaev is all about. You guys know that I know what Chimaev is about. But I was that high in DDP that I thought that would have been a very competitive fight. And it wasn't. You can't hit them all. Okay, guys, you cannot hit them all. All right, but like I said, we move forward. If you please can, before we jump into the first fight, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. And if you guys want to work with me for this event, as we get the big bounce back event going, and we get some of our money back from UFC 319, if you want to ride with me as we get our redemption, do not hesitate to shoot me an email or DM me on Instagram. I'll give you further details there. All right, guys.
The teller.
We'll kick this thing off in the light heavyweight division, where we have Diyar, Nurgozhay taking on Uran, Satybaldiev. And on paper, this fight makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of similarities going on here. Now, I'm not a history major, but maybe one of you history buffs can hit us up in the comment section below and elaborate on the fact that both these fighters are fighting from countries that start with the letter K and end with Stan, right? And Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. I'm sure there's some type of history or background as far as that's concerned. Besides that, almost mirror records. And I think it's kind of safe to say, specifically based on both of their last fights, that these are lower level fighters fighting in the UFC at this point in time. Now, the former LFA champ Satybaldiev did take that UFC debut fight against Marcin Buday on short notice. Okay, so we will give him a little credit there. And also, Buday just keeps going out there and winning, right? He just had another victory in the octagon over the respectable jiu-jitsu player. So that loss maybe doesn't look as bad in retrospect. While on the other hand, Nurgozhay looked really bad in his debut against Ribeiro, where he ended up getting caught in a Kimura. As that fight started to pick up, it looked like he really wanted no part of that. Okay, so there's question marks in regards to the fight that he has in him. He missed weight, right? He came in overweight on the scales. He seems to be carrying some excess weight. And also, it's worth mentioning that Satybaldiev was fighting up in the heavyweight division for that last fight, where he's much more suited in the light heavyweight division. So I like that going for him here. I think that Satybaldiev should have a little bit more fight in him. He's not the most technical. He's going to come forward. He's going to march forward. He's going to throw a lot of ugly strikes, but I do expect him to be the aggressor here. We'll see if Nurgozhay can maybe catch him with a counter strike. I think he has decent power. We saw him possessing some of that ability on DWCS, and I won't completely forget that he did come through for us, right? We had an official play on him on that episode, so I don't want to just completely badmouth him here, but that debut performance was really questionable, and it has forced me to lock in with Satybaldiev here as far as my pick is going to go. And Nurgozhay will be doing his little Twitch thing, and I don't know if that looks good for the judges' scorecards or not. It's just kind of awkward, and I think that I mean this seriously. I think from an optics perspective, I think that it'll look better for Satybaldiev as he's marching forward and Nurgozhay is tapping his face and just kind of looking awkwardly. If he doesn't catch Satybaldiev with the big strike, I think he's going to lose this fight. And in fact, I will call Satybaldiev to win this fight via decision. We'll take a look at some line movement going on here. And Satybaldiev opened up as a pretty big favorite, scattered through all these books, man. I seen him way up there, a lot higher than I expected. Even though I'm siding with him here, I mean, I did not expect him to be as high as like a minus 265. Are we just completely turning our backs on Nurgozhay after that performance and backing a guy in Satybaldiev that still has a lot more to prove to us? That's a little bit much for me. But as this line's coming down, it's potentially becoming reachable. It's becoming more accurate. And if it trends down to like minus 150, maybe you want to lock that in. In the bantamweight division, we have two fighters that came from the road to UFC, and Xiao Long and Yu Su Young. We got China versus Korea here. And if you ask me, this is a little bit of striker versus grappler. Okay, I've been pleasantly pleased with what we've seen from Long. Of course, in his last fight, he had the third round knockout over Quang Li. But before that, he had a decision that didn't go his way against another Korean in Chang Ho Lee. And I thought that he won that fight. It was very, very close. Okay, very close. That fight could have went either way, but I thought that he showed to have a lot of grit in that fight. And you saw some of the signs of his striking there. Once again, I think that's his bread and butter, man. He marches forward. He's willing to brawl it out. He's very tough. And we've seen a lot of his opponents try to go the grappling route against him. Now, you could say that's because his grappling's lacking a little bit, although I think that it's not that bad and it's getting better and better. But it also could be for the fact that they didn't really want to deal with the striking abilities that he possesses and the willingness of him to go to war. I think that there was a little bit of that going on in a lot of his matches as well. I think that when you watch this fight here, you're going to see that Yu isn't going to want to engage there too much. You'll see him circle a little bit, throw an occasional strike out there, but he will be shooting and he will be looking to use some of his jiu-jitsu. It's decently slick. But I think that Long is going to be able to defend. For the most part, he may get taken down. He also has a very good get-up game. I think that he'll be hustling, and he'll be the fighter that's looking to inflict damage. We'll see. Maybe he has a little bit of a crowd advantage or an advantage if it goes to the judges' scorecards. I don't know about all that. We'll see. Fight taking place in Shanghai. But even besides that, there's a lot of signs I like here for him. You take a look at their frames. At times we've seen Long looking a little undersized, and that's not really the case here, as Yu is a little bit more thick and stout, but actually now Long has a little bit of length to work with as well to go along with his striking. So I'm going to side with him. I think that he gets the job done here. Now, Long is the dog here. We've seen a little bit of action start to come in on him, but he's still settling in as a slight underdog. And I like the amount of professional fights he has for his age. He's just 27 years old. He has 33 pro fights. Okay, he's pretty seasoned. Okay, he is seasoned for a 27-year-old, and I think that you're going to start to see him show some progression. You could kind of say the same thing for Yu as well. He shows some flashes and signs, but I think that this is a bad stylistic matchup for him. I do. So give me Long to win this fight via decision. But I'll tell you what, you take a look at Yu's last loss, and it was via knockout. Okay, it was back in 2023. He was knocked out in the third round. And you gotta remember that, because it's very likely we could see a late finish as well, especially if Long consistently stuffs the takedowns as the fight progresses and pushes the pace. You may see him get another late finish, just as he did in his last fight, as he had that knockout against Quang Li in the third round. So there's a little bit of a recipe going on there. And I also want to mention, Yu came in as a big favorite, if you guys remember, in that last fight against a fighter that we all kind of looked down upon in AJ Cunningham. Cunningham was even having little flashes with his striking in that fight too. So, there's a lot of signs pointing towards the dog here for me. Yizha takes on our boy, Westin Wilson, the old golden retriever, right? The old loyal pup, Westin Wilson, who's out there living his dream right now. Okay. He's fighting in the UFC once again. He's coming in off of a victory. He went out there and he finished Jekka Sergei. Now, let's just be blatantly honest here. Westin Wilson is one of the more lower level fighters that we've seen in the octagon in some time. And the reason why he was able to pull off that victory against Jekka, where he pulled off the triangle armbar, was due to the fact that Sergei has absolutely zero grappling. Sergei wasn't able to capitalize and get a knockout early on in the fight, and he got dragged into a little bit of a battle there. And we do know that Wilson actually does have submission abilities. Okay, he will throw subs up at you. I don't think that his overall grappling is high level at all. In fact, I think it's quite low level, and he's very vulnerable to being subbed. That's another issue there too, because you look at his first two fights in the UFC where he was KO'd by Gene Silva and Joanderson Brito, two danger strikers. Okay, you can kind of look at it and say, hey, well, those aren't bad fighters, and maybe he's not that bad. But no, I mean, you look at the overall picture. He was subbed a lot of times on the regional scene, and he was caught with a lot of elementary subs, a lot of arm bars. He got caught in like a omoplata. Okay, so he's vulnerable to being finished in a variety of ways. And I think a fighter like Yizha, who's just 28 years old, he's hungry. He's 0-2 in the UFC, right? He took that first L. It was a split decision L against the Korean, who actually showed to have some ability. And he took that L, and then he got cut, or essentially went to the road to UFC, got a couple victories there, and then he got matched up with Gabriel Santos, who's an animal. Okay, and he did not get finished by Gabriel Santos. Santos would have ran through Wilson. All right, he showed toughness in that fight. I think that Yizha bounces back with the victory here, and I think that it's you got to go with him getting a finish, whether it's him pulling off an armbar, something like that, some type of sub. We've seen Wilson caught in that, and if you take a look at Yizha's last couple victories, in fact, two of his last three victories on the road to UFC were armbars. Okay, so maybe he can pull off some type of elementary sub on Wilson, but I wouldn't even be shocked if he catches old giraffe syndrome Wilson with something as they trade in the feet, as Wilson tries to implement his form of Stephen Thompson striking. You know, he trains over there with Thompson, but I mean, he's 36 and a half, and it won't look good if he gets cracked with a shot. But I have Yizha winning this fight inside the distance, and I'll go with him winning by sub. I'm going to go with sub, but the knockout could happen too. But inside the distance for Yizha. Now, the betting odds are crazy. We've seen Yizha almost around as high as a minus 2,000, minus 1,600. He's came down a little bit around the minus 1,200 range now. I just, obviously, you guys know how I feel about that. There's no way you're targeting him there. The value's definitely on the underdog. And if you have to have action on this fight, you're looking for like an under or some type of finishing method. I mean, if you guys are mixing him up in a parlay, old Yizha, I mean, that's pretty wild there. Michel Pereira welcomes Kyle Daukaus back to the UFC. If you guys remember, Daukaus was cut after losing two fights in a row that both came by way of strikes from Roman Dolidze and Eric Anders. And in fact, those are the only two fights that he's ever been finished in throughout his professional career. And since those losses, he goes over to the regional scene, he goes over to CFFC, and he's victorious 4 times in a row. He gets 3 finishes, pulls off 2 subs, hits a rear naked choke, and then his patented Darce choke in another. And then in his last fight, he actually gets the knockout, which that bout took place over a year ago. Right, so I'm sure he's been anxiously waiting to step back into the octagon. On the other hand, Pereira is coming off a very questionable performance where he took that L against Abus Magomedov. Okay, and the reason why there's a major question mark there, it's not the level of opponent. It's not just the fact that you go out there and take an L against Abus. It's the way he looked. He was extremely hesitant. He looked like a shell of himself. Okay, so you have to have some question marks about where his head is going into this fight. Looking back in retrospect, you really have to wonder how that late finish that Anthony Hernandez had against him and just that overall fight, how it impacted him going into that next match there. So can he regain his confidence? We know that when he is hitting on all cylinders, he's extremely dangerous, right? You think about some of the performances that he's had. I mean, the Andre Petrosky fight, that one really rings a bell, just the way that he went out there and he just imposed his dominance and his very flashy and confident striking. And we've seen him go out there and just play with his opponents for 15 minutes at times. He moves very, very well. And, I think that he is live. If he shows up and we see a vintage form of him, I think that he is live to land a KO on Daukaus. Okay. I'm not going to completely forget about how Daukaus looked, how he looked in those 2 losses where he was finished there. I'll say this though, if we see that same version from Pereira that we just saw in that last match. I think that Kyle Daukaus will be right in this fight. Daukaus, when he's hitting on all cylinders and when he's ready to go, when he's shining in there, he's a fighter that has jiu-jitsu. His striking's underrated. And, he's a very motivated fighter. If you guys remember, I actually interviewed him back on MMA Live Discussion a while back, a couple of years back, when he was just kicking off his UFC career. And you think back to some of his early bouts. I mean, he was in there with Brendan Allen. I think he went to a decision there and even took a round in that fight. So he's shown flashes from back in the day. He's just never really put it all together. Don't forget, he also should have had a finish against Kevin Holland, hit him with the headbutt there before submitting him. And, on a serious note, though, I think that he's very live here, especially based off where the betting line is for this fight right now. I think that the values on Daukaus, if you're catching him as high as plus 225, I mean, Yusuf Zalal kind of rings the bell here, and Daukaus has to prove something to us to even really getting that type of comparison. But a fighter that was cut by the UFC, that was still very hungry, went over to the regional scene, got a couple victories, couple finishes in a row, and maybe we see Daukaus start to put it together. And this is a potential spot for him as Pereira is looking to be mentally checked out. But we got to see how he shows up. But either way you spin it, I just don't feel confident backing Michel Pereira here with the high line next to his name. There's just too much of a question mark, and I'm a little scarred from losing money on him in that last bout. And it wasn't just the fact that he lost; it was the way that he lost it. I cannot trust him right here. The values on the dog. I will say that Pereira ends up winning this fight via decision. But as you're watching it play out, I don't think that you would feel very confident and where you put your money, and you might be on the edge of your seat there. So value on the dog here. Rongzhu takes on Austin Hubbard in the lightweight division, and Rongzhu is coming in off a very impressive performance where he was an underdog against Cody Steele. If you guys remember, they had a lot of history training together, and Rong went out there and he just led the dance. His striking looked very, very sharp in that fight. When you take into consideration he's just 25 years old, that you see that he's starting to come into his own. Okay, he has a lot of professional fights already, but he's physically maturing and he's getting a lot of confidence. And you got to love where he's at mentally, because going into that fight, right, he had a tough performance before that, where Chris Padilla was pretty much working him, hit him with that elbow and blew up his orbital, and the doctor had to stop the fight. And Rongzhu went right back out there after that bout and just was lacking no confidence. I think that he's a fighter we got to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, Austin Hubbard, he's still going out there chugging along. He arguably should be on a 3-fight winning streak. He lost his last 2 fights via split decision. I'm not saying that he should have won either of the 2, but they were very close. And the Markel Medeiros one, that was a tough L for him. That fight was on the table. He fell a little bit short in the 3rd round. And but you still like the fact that you're seeing Hubbard show up and show growth in his game, and that he's hungry to go out there and get a W. But even with that being said, it's just hard to back up here, and it's more based on the fact that I like what I'm seeing from Rongzhu, and I think that he shows up once again. And don't forget, Hubbard has had some questionable performances, right? He's lost to some very pedestrian fighters. He just got submitted by Kurt Holobaugh as of recently as well, and I can't back him here. Now we take a look at the odds. It's a little bit of a high line, but it's not necessarily scaring me. And as it continues to dip down, right, we've seen him as high as a minus 350s, coming down to the mid minus 200s. I hope that we see this line continue to trend that way. I hope it goes deep that way, and I would feel great jumping on Rongzhu, because I think that now is the time to start to back him. He's 25 years old. I think you're going to start to see this kid go into the UFC and continuously get his hand raised over the next couple of years. This is a good one here in the flyweight division. We have a real stylistic clash in the sense that we have the young buck, Loner Kavanagh, who's just 26 years old, has just 9 professional fights, less than half the amount of experience that the veteran, the 34-year-old Charles Johnson has. We know that Johnson's always game and live to show up even as an underdog and go out there and get his hand raised. Of course, the Joshua Van fight really stands out to us here. Van is next up to fight for the belt. So that's kind of Johnson's claim to fame, if you will. It kind of is. Van has just been going out there and working everybody. And I had Van winning that fight before getting caught, but Johnson was showing flashes even before he did land that KO. Johnson's a game opponent, and he's a fighter that has been very frustrated with the matchmaking that he's been given. And if you follow him on IG, he's complaining. He has wanted more top 15 fighters for some time. And I think that he just hasn't liked some of the matchups that he's been given because he's kind of looked at them like he was the fighter that was supposed to go out there and take an L against a young stud. As soon as things kicked off, right, when he made his UFC debut, he was matched up with Muhammad Makayev. You think about the Rafael Estevam fight. I know that he really didn't like the Ramazan Tamirov match that he just got, which Tamirov is this knockout artist. He just comes into the UFC and then Johnson has to face off against him. And look how that went for him, man. I think that mentally it probably messed with him, or he should have been more focused on the task at hand rather than worrying about complaining who he's getting matched up against. Now Tamirov did fail a drug test. It came out after that fight, so take that one for what you will. He outlanded Tamirov, but Tamirov was landing the bigger strikes, and he deserved to get his hand raised there. Now, I'll tell you what, if Johnson shows up and he is mentally prepared and he's locked in, which he should be very motivated coming off that loss, he's very live to get his hand raised here. Kavanagh has shown some real flashes. Of course, the flash knockout on DWCS showed that potential. He's a very refined striker. He's very well-rounded. He has wrestling abilities. But we've seen him, since he's came over to the UFC, he's been involved in some close battles. Although it's been against respectable talent, right? I'm high on Jose Ochoa, but he was not able to do what we just saw Asu Amabayev do to Ochoa, really pushing through with the wrestling. A lot of Kavanagh's takedown attempts were stuffed. I could see something similar playing out here where Johnson can stuff takedowns. He has underrated takedown defense, and we saw that on display even when he faced off against Makayev in his debut. All right, you take a look at Kavanagh's last match against Felipe Dos Santos, who I believe is now since been cut by the UFC. Dos Santos isn't necessarily a slouch. He's a young fighter with some striking ability, but that was a fight that played out very closely as well. I mean, when you look back at that, you have to feel that Charles Johnson, if he shows up ready to go, he has the ability to make this fight play out very closely and maybe use his veteranship and craftiness to get his hand raised via decision here. Maybe he slightly edges the volume out with the striking and stuffs those takedowns. So Kavanagh opened up right around a minus 250. And this is another line where we just see it dipping down. I find that very interesting. There's a lot of opening lines that have came down to earth as time is passing. And Kavanagh should not be a minus 250. Okay, he's currently a minus 190. I'm not even exactly sure if he should be a minus 190. I think people are high on him based off that big knockout victory he had over Anho on DWCS and the fact that he is just very refined and very technical. And the fact that he's young also, so people expect to see the continued growth and expect him to take his game to another level. But as of right now, this is a fight that should be pretty close on paper. This is a fight that should play out closely. I will say Kavanagh wins this fight via decision, but I'm going to say that it plays out closely. I'm going to say it's like a 29-28 victory for Kavanagh. And the value here, it's on the dog and Johnson, okay? The proven UFC fighter that has a lot more experience and that's going to be motivated. The value is on him, in my opinion. I'm not touching Kavanagh with where this line is. If this line trends much further down, then maybe we could talk about some value there. But as of right now, value's on the dog, Kavanagh to sneak out a decision here in a close one. Don't forget, it's comeback season. I'm looking for redemption after how UFC 319 played out. We're going to prevail here for UFC Shanghai. We're going to capitalize on a couple different spots. If you guys want to work with me for my official targets, reach out to me, shoot me an email or DM me on Instagram. I'll give you further details, but I'm getting my redemption, so come tail me. We got a battle of two 25-year-olds here in the lightweight division. Two fighters that came through Dana White's Contender Series, different seasons. Maheshate was from a while back, and he's been in the UFC a handful of times now. While on the other hand, Gage Young, who didn't get a contract, didn't even win his fight on DWCS, right? He took an L against Quillen Salkield, who is proving to be a good fighter. He took an L there, went back to the regional scene, and Young did get another knockout victory. Okay, he's been consistently getting knockouts in his recent victories. And after that W, he was able to get a short notice fight against Evan Elder. Evan Elder is a fighter that I'm very high on. I think he's a very under the radar type of fighter. And in that match, Gage Young showed his toughness. Okay, he was looking to bring the fight. He was just a little bit outmatched. But I think that he does showcase power and toughness and some well-rounded abilities. Maheshate was more looked at to be a polished kickboxer. I believe he fought in a headline spot on DWCS. And since then, some ups and downs. Of course, the big up was the knockout victory that he had over Steve Garcia. But since then, he's just 1-3, and he was even knocked out against Slava Borishev and took L's against Nicholas Mota and Rafa Garcia. So, and the mix of that, he did have a split decision victory against Gabriel Benitez, but I haven't been too impressed with what I'm seeing, and I don't think that he has really lived up to some of the initial hype. He's just 25 years old. I mean, there's definitely time for him to take his game to another level, but my gut is telling me that we're going to see Gage Young just be a little bit of a step ahead here as far as him closing the distance, using his toughness, maybe changing levels a little bit, but also being live to land a KO. Okay, if he closes the distance here and things get ugly, I could see Young showcasing some of the power that he possesses, and maybe we see him get a knockout. As far as where this line is, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me. You got Young right around a minus 130. He's not getting too much respect. We still want to see more from him. We want to see him get his hand raised, under a UFC banner type of fight. He's technically 0-2, including the DWCS fight. So you don't want to give him too much respect. But I think the fact that he's coming in as a favorite, it does showcase that people have some faith in his abilities. And I think that that line's pretty accurate. And I'm actually going to say that he gets a knockout. I'm going to say that things go well for him here on the night or on the morning for us, and he gets a knockout in this fight. He needs to make things ugly. He needs to close the distance and showcase some of that power. Pencil this one in. This is going to be fun. Taiyilake Nueraji takes on Kiefer Crosbie. This should be a real brawl. Okay, first off, you got Nurgozhay, who has 10 knockouts out of his 11 victories. He's very fun to watch. Some of you guys probably remember him from the road to UFC, which he fought on some years ago. Since then, he just continues to go out there and get KOs. He's very aggressive. I like his boxing skills. I'm not going to say that they're the most polished and refined, but they're pretty good. And he's aggressive. He has a nice frame for the division, and he goes out there and he implements that skill set on the opposition. Kiefer Crosbie has decent boxing, right? That's what he's really known for, is his boxing. We've seen him even as of recently dabble in the boxing world. So he can hold his own. And you take a look, yeah, he does have 2 KO losses technically. One of those is a DQ against Mike Jackson. You guys know how I feel about Mike Jackson. So, I had no problem with the illegal strike being thrown there. And so that was not a KO loss. The other KO loss that he had was a doctor stoppage. So technically Crosby's never really been finished in that sense. That's something to note, because that's what we're looking at here. Okay. Now on the return, can Crosbie, who has had his own fair share of knockout victories, can he go out here and capitalize and knock Nurgozhay out, which in his lone loss, he was KO'd against Meng Dang. And Meng Dang, if you guys remember him, he just fell short on Dana White's Contender Series. He was a big favorite and he did not come through. So I think that this is going to be a brawl. I think that these two men are going to go at it. And I think that Nurgozhay is going to end up being the fighter that looks a little better. And you also have to note that Crosbie has looked very inconsistent, and he's very unreliable as far as his grappling goes. So you have to be a little bit wary about that as well. He was just submitted by Sam Patterson, and then also submitted against Kevin Jousset. So that wasn't a good look there. And he was even submitted a while back in Bellator against Georgi Karakhanyan. So there's been a lot of submission losses going on, but we haven't really seen Nurgozhay threatening in that light. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but maybe you see him hurt Crosbie and then pull off some type of rear naked choke or something like that. I don't know if we just see Crosbie go out just straight from strikes. It could happen though. I'm going to officially say this one's tough for me. I just feel like Crosbie is going to kind of break down with the high pace of this fight. I think that I don't know if I want to say it like this, but he's going to kind of look for a way out. It could be like a TKO stoppage. Is one of his first legitimate TKO stoppages where he shells up and he's finished. And in that sense, I could see that happening. But I would not be surprised if we see kind of like, I don't want to say a club and sub either, but maybe we see Crosbie getting wilted and kind of gives a backup or something like that, or gets some type of sub slapped on him. I'm really torn. But I do have Nurgozhay winning this fight inside the distance, and I'm going to go with the sub. Crosby's just been so vulnerable to that sub. I'm going to say that he kind of goes out in that light, but it can come either way. And Super Saiyan is a pretty big favorite here. He's right around a minus 400 now. So people are high on him. Does Crosbie have enough left to offer here at 35 years old, coming off these losses? And remember, he was kind of like a dude that was shown in the light based on the fact that he had connections to Conor McGregor, right? Trains at a SPG and all that. He was kind of brought into the light back then because of that. But if you actually watch him, his boxing's decent. He kind of starts off decent, but he's very inconsistent, and I think he takes an L here. And I'm not going to argue with any of you guys that say that there's value on a minus 400 on Nurgozhay. Maybe he goes out here and just runs through Crosbie. I don't know if I could sit here though and say there's a crazy amount of value on it. I think maybe I have him capped right around a minus 350. But the point being is that he's the warranted favorite, and actually, we'll say he finishes this fight. He gets the finish in here. In the flyweight division, we have a fun one here. The Tibetan Eagle Sumudaerji takes on the Peruvian Kevin Borjas. And both of these fighters are going to go out there and get to do what they like to do best, which is showcase their striking abilities. Sumudaerji brings in that very long and dangerous frame, fighting out of the southpaw stance. We've seen him really have success on the feet at times. Kevin Borjas has flashed on the feet as well. You think back to his Dana White's Contender Series fight where he took on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt Victor Diaz, who came out of American Top Team there. Borjas was an underdog. He was able to create that space, stuff the takedowns, and then display his developing striking. Okay, and he comes into this fight off of a decent victory, at least a decent victory in his own right, right? He went out there and defeated Sleepy Boy. And Sleepy Boy, I believe he's an overrated fighter. So take that one for what you will. And I do believe that Sumudaerji is a little bit of a different threat here. I mean, look at the difference in the frames of Mudaerji and Sleepy Boy. Okay, if Mudaerji is going to sit in the pocket and trade with Borjas, yeah, Borjas is going to have a lot of opportunities to have success. But if Mudaerji fights a safer fight and a more intelligent fight and uses his footwork and attacks from the outside, I do expect him to get the better of the striking here. Although you don't want to completely overlook Borjas. Now, as far as the grappling goes, we've seen Mudaerji really struggle down on the mat at times. He's been submitted in 6 of his 7 losses. We saw what Tim Elliott did to him. That one hasn't aged that badly. You saw what Tim Elliott just did this past weekend. Matt Schnell caught him in that arm triangle type of choke when they were going to war. That was a little bit different, but I mean, he's been submitted. I just don't believe that Borjas is really that type of threat. And in fact, we've seen Borjas still struggle down on the mat. When you remember what Alessandro Costa did to him, he ground and pounded him and really had his way with him down on the mat. So I'm interested to see who gets the better of the striking, but I don't even know if it goes that route. I think that they both have that non-verbal agreement to just throw down on the feet, and it plays out like that. And I favor Sue getting the better of that type of fight. And I was there live. I got to see Sumudaerji's last fight against Mitch Raposo, and I thought he looked very good. Somehow that fight went to a split decision, another egregious scoring by some random judge there. But Sumudaerji, he pretty much had his way with Mitch Raposo. Now you take that for what you will. Mitch Raposo is a different fighter than Borjas. Mitch Raposo is a wrestler that doesn't really have any kind of striking ability. He's very undersized. So that was like a tailor-made matchup for Sue, as he was able to stuff those takedowns, and he had such a length advantage. But when I was watching that fight, though, I was impressed, and I thought that we were seeing development from Sumudaerji here, and I think that he's going to build off of it. We slide over to the betting odds, and once again, we see a line that is coming down, and it is warranted that it's coming down because although I do lean towards Sumudaerji's way, I don't think he should be anywhere near a minus 180. Okay, I have him capped more, being like a minus 145. I would feel more comfortable with a line next to his name like that. And as far as how I see the fight playing out, I don't think Borjas is going to prove to be easy to finish in that way, right? He has that one knockout loss, but it was down on the mat. It was really the grappling that led up to that type of loss. And I just don't think that Mudaerji is going to catch him with that one strike. It's possible for sure, but I think that Borjas proves to have a chin. And this fight goes 15 minutes where Sue then gets his hand raised, just landing more damage, and a very fun fight. So I would say that this is my most anticipated fight of the event in the heavyweight division. We got the mammoth and explosive Sergei Pavlovich, who's taken on Waldo Cortes-Acosta, who's on quite a winning streak. He's really starting to put it together. He's taken his game to a whole nother level. He just delivered for us as we had an official target on him against Sergey Spivak. That fight played out very closely. I thought that he deserved to get his hand raised, and I thought that he showed more evolution in his game, stuffing takedowns, and once again, showcasing his striking abilities. The victory that he had against Ryan Spann before that has aged well. Spann has just bounced back with the big victory, and that one looks decent now. So, on the other hand, Sergei Pavlovich, this is a fighter when he was hitting on all cylinders, leading up to that Tom Aspinall fight. Okay, I was so high on him, and I still am. But there's obviously a little something different with him these days. I feel like he lost a little bit of his edge, right? You take a look at the two losses that he took. Tom Aspinall finished him up in the first round. Then in his bounce back fight, he takes on Volkov, and Volkov goes out there and really styles on him. Remember how frustrated he was after the fight, didn't even want to give Volkov a handshake, which they had some kind of friendship outside of the cage, and he wanted nothing to do with that. And I think that mentally, he was just a little fragile in that fight. He was probably scared to get caught with the strike. He looked a little hesitant. I thought that he could have done a better job closing the distance where he needed to get on the inside. And I wanted to see him showcase that power that he always showed in the past, where he would go out there and just brutalize the opposition. We saw what he did to Curtis Blades. What he did to Tai Tuivasa was nasty. I was there for that one. That was in Jacksonville, I believe. And the whole crowd, I've mentioned this before, but the crowd was so quiet. You could almost hear the thud of the strikes landing in the arena was crazy. Okay, the way he came out and did that. And, he comes into this fight off the Jairzinho Rozenstruik victory. That was a fight that he had a lot of success using his wrestling. No coincidence, not really wanting to entertain the striking too much. And I think that there are some concern still about how he is going to look when there's a dangerous offensive striking arsenal coming his way, and that is what Waldo Cortes-Acosta has. He has solid boxing skills. Okay, this is the heavyweight division. All right, you might not look at Waldo as a big power puncher. Okay, but when he's throwing those strikes out there and he's decently technical, there is power on them, and we'll see how Pavlovich feels his way through that. I don't think that Pavlovich is going to have too much success going the wrestling route. I mean, it's a possibility. I know that he has got in a lot of work over at American Top Team, and he's trained with Steve Mako, who's a hell of a wrestling coach. So I know he's worked on that aspect of his game, and he's an explosive athlete. But I think that Waldo is also still developing with his takedown defense, and that's not going to be a walk in the park. I would like to see Pavlovich mix things up, try to work some leg kicks. Okay, he's not really known for that, but we've seen Acosta chewed up a little bit. You date back to his last loss that he took, which was against Marcos Rogerio de Lima. That's where his legs were eaten alive there. So we'll see if Pavlovich could do a little bit of that. All in all, I think that this is a pretty close match. You take a look at the numbers, and they actually favor the underdog, which we're going to get to the odds here in a second. Okay, you look at the ratio. Waldo has a solid ratio with his striking abilities. Pavlovich, on the other hand, though, we know it really only takes one from him. That's kind of the X factor going into this fight, is the fact that if we see a knockout, I favor it coming by way of Pavlovich. All right, it's not out of the realm that Waldo can land something too. We've seen Pavlovich KO'd before, but I'm more worried. I would be more worried if I was Waldo and those types of exchanges, those heavy exchanges early on, because Pavlovich is a beast. If he comes in mentally ready to go and he has that killer instinct in him, he's a problem. Now let's go take a look at the odds, and what do you know? Another fight where you see the line coming down. Pavlovich was around a minus 280s, coming down to the low 200s, and it makes perfect sense. How can you not feel that there is value on the dog and Waldo where that line opened up? Okay, it's coming back to earth. This is one of those ones for me where I've been a big Pavlovich fan. Okay, I like when I tune in and I get to see him go out there and be in prime form, where he's going out starching dudes, and you get to watch that type of spectacle. If you guys know what I'm saying, I'm a fan of that. Okay, I like watching Waldo fight too, but it's not really the same thing. I hope that we see Pavlovich show up here and we see that vintage form from him. I would love to see him get a knockout here. Think that is possible. Um, and I'm gonna go with Pavlovich to get a KO here. Now I'm gonna go with him to win the fight regardless. I think that he may change levels. He may mix some things up here. Maybe he plays it a little bit more conservative. But I'm gonna say that he does enough to get his hand raised regardless. But that knockout is on the table. It's always on the table. I don't care if he's facing off against a fighter that's never been knocked out. The knockout is alive, and I think Pavlovich gets his hand raised one way or another. But it's kind of a high line. It really is. It's still kind of a high line. I hope that this is another line that continues to trend that way, and maybe you can cook something up there, but it's a little high still. If you're looking for a new sports book, reach out to me. I'll give you my referral link to bovada.lv. If you guys sign up through it, you will get an added bonus to your account, and I will give you my entire betting slate for this event or any event that you want. You could save it for any event you want if you sign up through the link. And it's a good little package you got going on there. It's a great sports book. I've been using them for years. Reach out to me if you're interested. Shoot me an email or DM me, and I'll get you that link. In the co-main event, we have the former bantamweight champion of the world, Aljamain Sterling, who's taken on they consistently ranked Brian Ortega. Both these fighters are now in their mid 30s. This is kind of an interesting class year. I think whoever shows up more motivated and dedicated to the sport at this point in their career will bring in a serious edge with them. With that being said, though, I do believe that Sterling is a very tough matchup for Ortega. Ortega has nasty jiu-jitsu, but Sterling has never been submitted. Okay, so good luck catching him with something. Not only does Sterling have really good offensive wrestling, his jiu-jitsu is very sharp. Okay, and I don't even want to say underrated because you guys know how dangerous he could be there as well. Nobody's going to forget what he did to Corey Sandhagen, how he went out there and pulled off that quick sub. But just all in all, there's a reason why he's never been subbed. Okay, he is a high level grappler, and I'm not really willing to bank on Ortega pulling the sub off, which he very well may need because Sterling is going to be pushing the pace with the wrestling nonstop. I think that Ortega is going to have to threaten with something on the mat, and he's going to have to pull off some kind of reversal. He's going to have to gain some kind of respect there. All right, he wants to keep the fight standing. I would say. I think that Ortega could potentially have an advantage there. I've never been that high on Sterling striking. He's a solid athlete. He's a decent athlete. He used to get away using that explosive type of striking. It was very untechnical, but he would kind of explode in. If you think back to like the Pedro Munoz fight back in the day, he used to get away with that, but it'll catch up with you, right? And we saw it catch up with them against Sugar Sean O'Malley. Brian Ortega is pretty smooth with his boxing skills, and if this fight was just a straight kickboxing match, I would favor Ortega in that type of fight. But it's not. This is a mixed martial arts bout, and one that stylistically favors Sterling, in my opinion. Okay, I mean, there are some signs that were having me a little bit intrigued. I really like the way that Ortega looked in the rematch against Yair Rodriguez, and Yair Rodriguez just went on to look phenomenal against Pitbull, and then we saw Pitbull actually deliver in his second fight in the UFC. So that performance that he had against Yair has really aged well, even though he then took an L against Diego Lopez in a fight where he was taken down a little bit down in the mat, but he was outstruck. And even though I say that I would side with Ortega in a straight kickboxing striking type of match, it's definitely worth noting that Ortega is also a fighter that eats a lot of damage. Okay, he's eaten a lot of damage throughout the years. You look at it statistically, he absorbs more than he lands. Now, a lot of that is due to a couple different fights, but specifically the Max Holloway fight where he was outstruck in crazy fashion. So I would pick him over Sterling in a straight kickboxing match still, but he has issues taking damage, and we'll see how that goes if Sterling can inflict something on the feet there. But I expect Sterling to have a very heavy grappling attack. This is another fight. Okay, it's kind of funny, man. I know some of you guys are probably getting annoyed, but another fight where you see the line dipping down, and I think that it is coming back to reality. I don't think that Sterling should be that big of a favorite, but in this one, I don't know. I would kind of lean towards there still being value even on Sterling with him being a decent favorite here because my gut is telling me, and when I watch the tape, I'm seeing Sterling pushing the pace, closing the distance, and just he's not a fighter that gets caught in subs. And I think Ortega will get frustrated, and Sterling will dominate the position and will win a decision here. Now you're definitely going to want to buckle your seatbelt up for this one. This is going to be a fun one. Mingyang Zhang takes on Johnny Walker. This is a fight where we're most likely going to see a KO. Okay, let's just be very realistic right off the rip. And of course, if you didn't know already, Zhang is a big favorite, and he's favored to be the fighter that goes out there and gets a KO. Johnny Walker has been knocked out in 6 of his 9 losses, and a lot of them have happened recently. You think back to what Megaman Ankalaev did to him. Corey Anderson really kicked off the string of knockouts that started. Jamal Hill finished him up. More so as of recently, right? We saw Volkan Ozdemir hit him with the KO, which was after the Ankalaev KO. I mean, there's been a lot of knockouts, and when he gets knocked out, he doesn't just get, slightly KO'd. Okay, I like to say, and I know a lot of people say this online. I'm not saying I make this up, but it's a very accurate description. He gets knocked out in cartoon fashion. Okay, that's kind of how it plays out, man. He just gets starched. He starts flopping around. He's so big in there, and it looks ugly for him. And then you have a fighter like Zhang, who's just been moving so well in there, right? He's very technical. He came into the UFC. He was definitely overlooked. I don't care what anybody says out there. I know everyone's in on the hype train now, and you see him coming in as a big favorite. But I also was included in this. I overlooked him. You took a look at his record coming into the UFC. I think he was 16-6 at the time, and he goes in there against Brendan Ribeiro. Yeah, he knocks him out in devastating fashion. He follows that up with the Ozzy Diaz KO. And then as of recently, he retires Anthony Smith, just beating him down. Okay, but again, when you watch the tape on him, when you're watching him live, you guys know what I'm talking about. He moves very well for his size. That's what stands out to me. He's a polished striker who moves very well, and he's most likely going to touch Johnny Walker up here. And can Walker survive? Can he survive that onslaught, or can he survive that one pinpoint type of strike that lands the mark? Is he going to be able to withstand that? And I don't think that he is. But I will throw this out as well, that not only is Walker a very dangerous fighter, okay, you take a look at his 21 victories, 12 of them have come by way of KO. Don't forget how he kicked his UFC career off, landing knockouts in a variety of ways. But Zhang has also showed in the past to be vulnerable to being finished. He's been finished in 5 of his 6 losses. He's been KO'd 3 times, and he's been finished by low-level fighters. Now, the asterisk there is I think that has a lot to do with the fact that he was just early on in his career, and he wasn't the fighter that he is today. I'm not exactly sure why he had such a slow start, but he took a good amount of losses to kick his career off. Like I said, he was 16-6 coming into the UFC. That's not really a resume that stands out that much, and it really doesn't reflect the fighter that we're seeing in the octagon today. But at the end of the day here, I do believe that Zhang is going to get the KO. I think it's going to happen in the first round, first or second round. You got to be looking at the unders here. And I will say first, I'll say the first round. I say that Zhang gets him out of there. I would expect them to meet and to start to throw down. Now, Johnny Walker will be dangerous. You know what I'm talking about. You think about like the flying knee he threw in on Ankalaev. He'll throw something. He'll throw the kitchen sink at Zhang, but there'll be low percentage type strikes while Zhang will have a reliable, more high percentage strike that will still do the job, and will have Walker doing the chicken dance out there, and he'll get folded up. So yeah, I got Mingyang Zhang getting the job done here. He's a big time favorite. Once again, we see this line coming down, but I'll be clear, even with as big of a favorite as he opened up as, I'm just on the Zhang side here. I feel like I know how this fight's going to play out, and it's going to be with Zhang knocking Johnny Walker out in his home country, and things just being exciting over there in the arena. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this one up. As always, I appreciate you for hanging out with me here. It's been a good amount of time here. I've been hanging out. I actually recorded Dana White's Contender Series week 2 earlier, so I've been in the lab, and we'll kind of cruise into the parting words here, man. I've been in the lab since the crack of dawn. Believe it or not, I'll say this much, and I don't ever really go this route. I see people in the comment section saying stuff here and there once in a while, but listen, there's people that are doing a lot harder work than I'm doing. So I'm not really going that route fully, but I'll just say this: it takes a lot more time to get a lot of this content up and to refine all this content than some of you guys understand. So I literally been going since 8 in the morning. I mean, sprinkling in a couple of little other things, errands or whatever things I'm doing, but I'm recording this right now. It's 1 a.m. All right. So I had a nice complete day, and I got other things I got to get to still. You know what I mean? We got to get things going. I got other stuff behind the scenes here. But as I've been telling you guys, I was waiting on something, and I got my new computer, man. This is the second video after the Dana White's Contender Series episode I recorded where I'm on my new system. Now, I just got the computer in, and I'm just starting to get some of my programming and all that just, up on the computer. There's a lot of new stuff that I want to tweak, and you guys are going to see this all unravel into the channel. And then more importantly, I have way more capabilities now, which is going to translate into the new segment that I'm going to be having come your guys' way at least once a week, or hoping to be once a week. But it's going to be an interactive show that you guys are going to absolutely love, with guests on it and stuff. But there's a special premise to it, and I can't wait to unravel that to you guys. And I can't wait to even sharpen things up with these prediction videos, because now I have the capabilities to have a lot more going on here. So I just want to thank you. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, showing love, hitting that like button, subscribing, spreading the word about the channel. And as we take this thing to another level, man, I appreciate all you guys dearly. And I hope you guys are out there grinding and refining whatever you guys are doing too. I hope you guys are happy with yourselves. And, when you look at yourselves in the mirror, you got to be hustling, man. You can't be just laying around. You know what I mean? I've been there. I've been lazy at times, and it's not a good feeling. You know what I mean? When you could do more in a day. So make sure you guys are seizing the day. Leave you guys with that. Signing out. Teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller.